All right, let's go ahead and create some projectiles. Basically, when our player collides with our item and it disappears, this will be the object that we throw. Okay, so I'm going to go into my blueprints. I'm going to right click, go to new folder, and I'm just going to call this projectiles. Boom, just like that. Double click in there, right click. We're going to go to blueprint class, and similar to our items, this is the actor blueprint class, and I'm just going to call this my base projectile. There we go. And now I'm going to double click it and dock it if you need to. Just grab the tab and dock it up top. And we're going to add a couple components onto this. We're just going to add the static mesh. Static mesh, remember, it's the single house onto there. And then we're also going to add our projectile movement. There we go. Boom, just like that. Now, we're going to need to configure it a little bit here. We're going to go to our base projectile at the very top. It has self next to it. And we're going to come down to the replication section and basically replicate it. This is very important because the item gets created on the server, but we need all of our clients to see it as well. So we need it to replicate to our clients. That's just a quick networking thing in a nutshell there. Go ahead and compile that. That's fine. Now I'm going to move down to my static mesh. Don't need to configure my static mesh. In our children of this base projectile, we will configure what it looks like. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I don't need this static mesh to generate any overlapping events. I don't need a character to step up on it, so I'm going to click no, and I'm going to say I do not want this static mesh to be able to collide with anything. Okay, then I'm going to go to my projectile, and for this one I don't have to do anything. I want to leave this, it's my base projectile. I don't want to make any configurations in here. Now if I wanted to, I could say, well, I want all my projectiles to have an initial speed of we'll say 1000. Okay, you can do that. That is completely okay. Just so that you don't like forget to change the speed in your children and you're like, why isn't my projectile moving? This will always make sure that your projectiles will move right off the bat, but they'll also have gravity set to them as well, because gravity, if it's 1.0, if it's 1, that means there's gravity. If I went 0 in here, that's no gravity. We'll just keep the gravity on there for this base one. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to compile here and save, and that's all I actually have to do in my base projectile. Now I'm going to go back to my gameplay. I'm going to right click on my base projectile and say, that's right, create child blueprint class. Perfect. And now what I can do is I'm just going to call this my carton, because for every item that I created, I have to create an equivalent projectile. Now, could I throw something completely different? Yeah, it's up to you what you actually want to throw if they pick up a specific item, but I'm just going to do a one-to-one, right? So if my item's a carton, I'm going to throw a carton. So I'm just going to call this carton underscore projectile. There we go. I'm going to double click on it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure its static mesh, so I can come down to the static mesh. I'm going to go to the static mesh, and let's decide what it looks like. It's going to look like a carton, so I'm going to say carton 01. Box 01 is my carton there. Boom. Nice. And then what I can do is scale it down. Go ahead and click in here my viewport, and just sometimes you have to alt and click and drag, and then there we go. I can make it smaller, like this, and it's up to you. You could throw a giant item. It's up to you what the projectile looks like. And I'm going to move this down so it's at the center of this default scene root component. That's what that white thing is. It's the default scene root thing, and it's good for centering items. So I can click on this and bring this down a little bit so that it's centered on there. Perfect. And then what I need to do is I need to add another component. Do you know what component I need to add? Yeah, my collision. And I usually want to add a collider that is the same shape as my static mesh. So I have a box here, so I'm going to add a box. So I can come up here. Actually, I want to make sure that's selected, my default scene root. Then I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to say, well, let me just type in collision, just so you can see. So if I type in collision, it gives me all the different colliders that I can have: a box, a capsule, and a sphere. So the same shape, or similar shape, because you can't find the exact same shape. I'm just going to do a box collider. There we go, and it puts it on there. And now what I can do is I can make that a little bit smaller, so I can scale it down. Let me see here. Make this smaller here. And then I'm going to pull it out a little bit. Perfect. And now I can I don't have to compile just yet. But what I want to do with this box is I want to come down and configure the collision. This is very important because it won't work properly. All right, so we want to generate an overlapping event. Perfect. We do not want our character to step up on it. Let me just make this smaller. We want to click on the overlapping all dynamic and say custom. Then we're going to go to collision enabled, and we're going to change that to collision enabled query and physics. We're going to leave the object type as world dynamic. Then we're going to come down here and do some specific customizations. To start off the bat, just go ahead and click on the block column. Okay, block all. Then we're going to come over here to the world static, and we want to overlap. All right, very important. We want to overlap that. And the reason that we want to overlap the world static is because when it hits, we're going to have our walls and our buildings generate an overlap event. And those are considered world static. So when it hits those, we want it to destroy. Okay, we don't want it to keep going because we want our players to be able to hide behind walls. World dynamic, we want to ignore that. That's the projectile itself is a world dynamic, so we want to make sure that it'll go right through another projectile. That's fine, and it won't shoot properly if you don't. Okay, then we want to generate an overlapping event on our pawns. We want to be able to hit other players. All right, so if we didn't do that, if we hit ignore or block, it wouldn't work properly, or it just would not generate an overlapping event. So we want to make sure that it is able to overlap a pawn. All right, so that's all we have to do for that. Everything else is good, and then we can come down to our projectile movement and we can change the initial speed. So I could say, okay, 1,000's fine for me, but if I wanted to, I could say no. No. I want this to go to 3,000. I want this thing to be like a bullet, okay, really fast. And then don't worry about the max speed. That just caps the amount. So if I had 3,000 for my initial speed, but I said the max speed was only 2,000, what speed is it going to move at? Yeah, it's only going to move at 2,000 because that's what I'm maxing it out at. And then I want to take gravity off so it goes in a straight line. It's not affected by gravity. If I wanted to look like I was actually throwing it, I put gravity on it and it has an arc. Okay, so that's it for that. Let's go ahead and compile. That looks good, and save. All right, and then I would just keep going. Okay, I would hit gameplay map, right click on base projectile, create new child, and then this might be my barrel underscore projectile, and enter, and I double click and start it again. So remember, I'm doing 1-to-1. So I would do a carton, I would do a barrel, and then just keep going for all the different items that I allowed my players to be able to pick up. All right, so that's it. I'm going to file and save this, and go ahead, have some fun creating your projectiles, and in the next one, we're going to be able to actually launch it. All right, I'll see you guys in a little bit.